became the CEO of the organization he represents. I'll let him tell that. Because in college, he met the woman who started the firm, Monica Little. And they had a mentoring partnership that started way back then. And through that time, he was able to see what was possible for himself. You're going to hear his story. He's a sum total of all the experiences that happened in his family business that he grew up in, to his college experience, to the things that he learned by learning how to take design thinking and design into the business world. It's really exciting to have Joe come and finish the conversation about the Good Leadership Breakfast this year in November. I think you're really going to find this to be fascinating. So please join me in welcoming Joe Cecere.
Sir?
Have fun.
All right. Just in case. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. I'm happy to be here. You know, when Paul talked to me about the theme and it being future today, I got to admit I was pretty excited. And the first thing I thought of is one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid, Back to the Future. You're going to hear a lot of dorky references today, but I loved Back to the Future, and I remember going to see the movie, and I'm sure most of you have seen it, but you remember at the end when Doc turns to Marty and says, "Marty, where we're going, we don't need any roads." I know it's my wife told me not to do that impression, but I did it anyways. And the DeLorean flies off into space, and the type comes up and says, "To be continued." I remember freaking out as a kid. Oh my God, there's going to be a sequel, and it's going to be the future. I was so excited. I remember going in my neighborhood to the local 7-Eleven to look at Mad Magazine, because that's where we got our movie information before the internet, to find out when Back to the Future 2 was coming out, because I was always fascinated with the future as a kid. I used to wonder, what's the world going to look like? What are things going to be like? I used to think about myself. What's my career going to be someday? Who am I going to marry? What are my kids going to look like? I was obsessed with the future. So I fast forward to today. It's 2017. I'm 47 years old. I'm in the future. I married the most wonderful person in the world. I have 2 awesome kids. I have a job that I love. And I still think about the future, and I still wonder what it's going to be like someday. But honestly, I understand now more than ever that the future isn't some mystery that's far away. The future happens right now. The future is going to happen right now. It's going to happen a second from now. It's going to happen tomorrow. The future is always moving. So you think back to the movie, will punching Biff before the enchantment under the sea dance guarantee that George McFly becomes successful? Well, in the movie, yes. In real life, I don't believe so. I don't believe when you do one thing, that you're on that path to the future and that's all it is, and that defines everything that happens in the future. I believe you're going to be on 1,000 paths in your life. And you're going to have to go walk down one path and jump to another path and go backwards and start over again. And you've got to be able to evolve and change at a moment's notice. My philosophy, and with good advice from Kirsten, my wife, is take one day at a time and go to work every day and do the best work, be good to people, do the right thing, and understand that you got to evolve to survive. So, you may have heard of a little place my parents come from. It's called Italy. Both of them Southerners. They were raised with the kind of work ethic that produces the finest leather or the perfect Parmigiano Reggiano. That same work ethic that sent them overseas by boat to America to work and get jobs and send money back to their families in Italy. Some have called that, them pursuing the American dream, but from what I've heard from my parents, the conditions were a lot less than dreamlike. My dad came over, he had a suitcase, he had a couple dollars in his pocket, and he had a lemon. I heard this story. He had a lemon to ease seasickness that he got from his mom. He was 12 years old when he got on that boat. My mom came to this country when she was 16. But the 2 of them instilled in me and my brothers a work ethic that has found each of us in our dream roles. What makes my dream role a little bit different is that I'm running a company with someone else's name on the door. So in 2011, I became the president of Little & Company, Monica Little's well-loved and respected design firm. And with that came the immense responsibility of finding my own voice as a leader, connecting to employees that used to be my peers, and planning the future of a 39-year-old company that acts a lot like a startup. So it's come with its share of challenges, but let's go back to the beginning, and like every good Italian story, this one starts with spaghetti. So once my dad was established in the United States, he opened a small Italian restaurant in St. Anthony Village, Minnesota. He was a proud Italian, and he wanted to fill the menu with only proper Italian dishes that he knew back from his home country. But my dad was also a realist, and he was a very good businessman, and he knew better than that. He knew that he had to skew his menu to appeal to an American audience. I mean, imagine, this is 1976 in St. Anthony Village, Minnesota. He couldn't do those authentic recipes like he thought he should, and he skewed them. And if you know one Italian, you can imagine how well that went. But once he made the decision, he went into it 110%. He made all the recipes by hand. He put his heart and soul into everything he did, and he created an authentic Italian experience that his customers could truly love. So this was the beginning of my training on work ethic. I knew, even back then, when I was 8 years old, I knew I wanted to be a designer. I remember I used to make the special signs at my parents' restaurant. One of my highlights was the meatball sandwich special sign. I had red and green Sharpies and poster board. It's beautiful. And my parents would always teach us that if we wanted to do anything in the world, we could do it if we work hard and we're passionate about it. And we really took that to heart. So one of my brothers is a successful attorney, and my other brother is the leader of another little place you may have heard of called U.S. Bank. I was definitely the black sheep of the family. I was the designer. But I always stayed true to what I wanted to do and stayed passionate about it, and I now lead the future of a well-loved and respected company. So Paul mentioned this. Monica Little was my instructor back at MCAD. And I joined Little & Company in 1999 as a designer. And I remember early on in my career, I always expressed an interest in leading. Then I just worked really, really hard every day. I never asked for a title. I never asked for a raise. I just really worked hard, just like my father did. It later came out that Monica always knew that I'd one day take over her company. She saw a passion in me that reminded her of her own. So when the transition and the switch needed to take place, the succession planning had already begun. Monica knew that she wanted to keep the change internal. She wanted the company to be privately owned. I mean, this was a family to her. And she wanted to keep the integrity and values of the company in place. So to her, I was the easy answer. But I didn't go into this role lightly. I went into it with the same passion I've always had for design. So I was faced in my early leadership days with the question, how do I authentically pour myself into this company while creating a sustainable future for it, all while paying respect to what Monica had built? And the answer was to really find my voice and bring that to life in a way that was true to me. So at that point, I thought back to my father again, and him knowing, I knew that he would know that the changes I needed to make for that company. He would have went all in. He would have made it better than it was before, his name on the door or not, and that's what I did. And at that point, I could have taken Monica's path exactly. I could have followed her vision exactly and made it right as her company. And I didn't make it right, and I worked hard, but I did it in my own way. I made it my own. So part of the uncomfortable move from peer to president at Little & Company was making an authentic connection to the employees that used to be my peers. So you can imagine, for over a decade, I was working side by side with these designers, and then one day they stopped designing for me, and they stopped designing for Monica, and they started designing for me. I took this change on in the only way I know how, by being myself. So you've got a little glimpse of me in the beginning, talking about Back to the Future. To know me is to know I also love The Godfather. I love Rocky. Yes. That's so awesome. I would do anything to have a band in our office for every company meeting. Thank you. I love Rocky. I've referenced him in the past as a designer. I reference him now as a leader. I love to cook. So 2 times a year, I open up Joe's Panini Bar in our office, and I grill up sandwiches, I pour some wine, we all sit at our communal table and have lunch together. Oftentimes, in addition to Rocky, you'll hear a heavy metal song or two in our company meetings, my way of pumping up the team. The point being, even though I have a fancy title now, I don't hide my weird. It's my way of authentically connecting to employees and finding my voice. There's a certain level of vulnerability in being transparent like that, but it's helped me grow roots in a garden that someone else planted long, long ago. I stay true to who I am always, but I evolve when needed. After I came to Little & Company in the first place because it was considered one of the best design shops in town, and I wanted to make sure I stayed true to that standard. Another challenge becoming president of the company was getting our voice out into the community. And this was a community that very much loved and respected what Monica had built. It's not a stretch to say, if you're in the design community, you know this, it's not a stretch to say that Monica Little is a legend in the design industry. So taking over a company that's a small company that someone else started is already a challenge, but when you're taking it over and that name happens to be iconic, it's a whole different story. So I connected with as many organizations and people as I could to let them know what to expect from Little and what they'll see from us in the future. Then came the growing pains. We started to realize that we were building an expertise, that clients would come to us when they needed help defining their purpose or their voice, and we would build foundational brand stories for these clients and help communicate their purpose and voice to their employees and their customers. We got really, really good at it, and we became a very strategic firm in building these purpose-driven things for our clients. What happened, though, is we got so focused on this expertise that we started to lose sight on what made Little so special in the first place, design. So over time, we were able to define our own purpose and our own voice. Now and for the foreseeable future, Little's purpose is to design experiences to enhance people's lives every day. And with that front and center, it keeps us focused on creating the best and greatest work out there. And I believe with that front and center, everything else will follow. Doesn't mean it was easy, though. Again, I thought back to my father and his decision to change his recipes. It hurt at first, but once he made the decision, he went all in, and his successes followed. The other thing with the work with companies is getting that purpose out there. I just totally had a mind block. I'm sorry. I got to look at my notes really quick. Sorry. Yes. In having this purpose front and center, it allows us to really look and choose the kind of clients we want to work with. We now look at clients, at prospective clients, and we say, do they believe that design can make the world a better place? Do they too believe that they want to create experiences to enhance people's lives? If so, we'll work with them. If not, we'll save our opportunities for opportunities that better align with our purpose. And when I say, when I talk about the company, I talk about me, but I really talk about everybody at our company. We have an amazing team of talented, strong people that help me lead the company into the future. Is that really that's how much time I have left, right? Okay. Sorry, I was like, what? I've talked for 4 minutes. No, I haven't. When I think about the people at our agency, we have a strong group of people that help me lead into the future. One thing I especially love about our leadership team that I formed at Little is that each of them, only one person comes from a traditional design background, but each of them share my passion for design. And they help bring design to life in new and creative ways every day. Another part of planning for the future of our company is defining the next leaders in our company. These are people that are learning and growing and making decisions today that affect tomorrow at Little. When I see them working, I'm reminded of my younger self. They're hungry, talented people, and they're ready to make their mark in our company. They're really our future decision makers at our company. There's some students here, I'm also teaching a senior design class at Minnesota State Mankato. And it's funny, I look out into this class and I'm reminded of when Monica taught me at MCAD. And I think I look out at these students and wonder if the next president of Little is in the audience right now. So right now we're in a transitional period. I don't have it all figured out yet, and I don't know if I ever will. The challenge being is creating a sustainable future for our company, but being able to evolve and change when needed. The design industry is changing every single day. Our clients have different needs, the work is changing, so we have to evolve too. Design has and always will change, but the purpose of it does not, just the way it comes to life does. For us, design is about creating experiences to enhance people's lives, and in the simplest way, we gauge any future work on that. The design, it's changing, but the way we bring it to life is always in flux. If you think back to my earlier story, when I was 8 years old, I was making meatball sandwich signs on poster board with Sharpies. Just yesterday, I was thinking about how we could use virtual reality to bring brand experiences to life. The design world is always going to be moving and changing, and that's what the future really brings us. But the purpose of it does not. The inner passion and the things I love about design will always be the same. So once again, I find our company in a time of evolution. The most important thing for us is to keep our work and design as number one, no matter what. And making sure we stay authentic to what Little & Company has and always will be, and what we say a lot inside is a kick-ass design firm. I think back to my father and his advice to me. And he always said you could do anything you want, work hard, be passionate, but you got to be able to be flexible. You got to be able to take punches, and you got to evolve. That was the advice I really remember the most. I've had great mentors in my father, and I have great mentors in Monica, and I have great mentors surround me every day at work. And having that in my mind that we must evolve is something I'll always remember. So, while the punches have certainly come my way over the years in running a company with someone else's name on the door, I wouldn't have it any other way. Thank you.
Thank you. So in your table handout, we had a spot for you to take some notes. I took some, and at the very bottom, it says table discussion question. So how does your satisfaction with your future affect your leadership? And I would actually say, I loved how you got us started with the future is always moving. That's a fascinating concept. So, how is that concept about future? How does that affect your leadership right now? Ready, set, go. Thanks for the conversation. There's a lot of energy in the room. Joe and I had a fascinating conversation at the round table here, and I thought I would just recreate some of that. I loved the idea that you planted in our brains immediately that the future is always moving. Mm-hmm. That is a really beautiful concept. And what's also sort of the opposite of that is when leaders are stuck. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to find out, you make it sound all so easy and rosy and stuff. So when have you been stuck?
I've been stuck a few times in my career at Little, and I think when I think too much about the past, when I'm moving into the future is when I've gotten stuck. When I've thought too much about the way things have been done, or the way maybe Monica did things at the agency, and hard to make a switch, sometimes it's made me a little stuck to take that first step forward to make a change. Mm-hmm. But when I have, it's always, most of the time, it's paid off. I mean, risks, you got to take risks, and sometimes you fall down, but it's thinking too much about the past that'll get me stuck for the future.
Mm-hmm. So when we first met, we had a really good conversation about design thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious if you would take a few minutes here to explain to us, what do you mean by design thinking? How can we recognize what that is, and how can that help us?
Sure, yeah. I talked about our purpose, using design to enhance people's lives. Design's about solving problems. You look at the bucket pail, that solved a very big problem when you're painting a wall. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to go up and down the ladder to put paint on the wall. It's beautifully designed, it's smart, it's simple, and it solves a problem. I mean, that's, in a nutshell, that's what design is, and that's what...
There you go, that's exactly right, yeah. Yeah, if you don't have one, go get one, right? Mm-hmm.
And when we say enhance people's lives, every day you're having a million interactions. Those should be well-designed interactions. You should be able to move through the world in a smooth way, in a beautiful world, in an effective world, and design solves a lot of those problems and just makes life better. Mm-hmm.
So tell me about how, let's kind of recreate your father's restaurant then. I mean, I think when I first learned about design thinking many, many years ago, I started to really pay attention to restaurants.
Yes.
From the second that you even choose it to the time that you leave. So just kind of lead us through that and help us understand that from a design thinking standpoint.
Of my
your
father's restaurant?
Yeah, sure.
You know, my father's restaurant was all about authenticity. So he was, it's funny, we would always, when I worked there over the years, the one thing we'd always battle is the level of lighting. So he would always turn it up high so people would see the food. I would turn it down low so he'd have better ambiance. It was a battle we never solved. But his restaurant was all about authenticity and knowing his customers and doing the best thing he could do for them. And one thing he was really great at, he made homemade bread. He would get up every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning and make homemade bread. And this was he knew that would be appealing to that audience, and people loved it. And it just was an amazing thing. So he poured his heart and soul into everything he did, and people felt it.
Well, let's talk about your work as a designer and as a leader at Little & Company. Can you describe a favorite client or a favorite project or something that we might actually recognize?
Well, I may have clients here. All my projects are my favorite.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
No, you know, one of my, there's so many. One of my favorite, years and years ago, we worked at the Minnesota Historical Society, and we did the identity for Mill City Museum in Minneapolis, if any of you have ever been there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That was one of my favorites, just because it was such a transformation for them. Another part about design and building brands is uncovering a true story about an organization. And this was a historical organization, and they were building this brand new museum, and they had so much to tell, and they were not telling so much. So we brought their story to life and branded that, and since then we've branded all their sites around the state, and we've transformed them. We made them look at marketing and design in a whole new way. So when we see those light bulbs going off and that transformation, that's the most rewarding thing for me.
Yeah, that's a fascinating example. I was thinking about some of these powerful brands that we all see and shop and things like that, and I'm grateful you brought that one up. So you're teaching these kids. We have kids here in the room today. Mentoring is a huge part of future. What advice are you giving to those students in Mankato?
A lot of advice. For design students in particular, but I think any students, is to know your own why you're making the decisions you're making, and being able to talk and explain that. So design in particular, these students are doing identities and work for me, and they're drawing and creating things. And I want to hear the reason they're doing them, and why they think that's the right decision, and why that's the solution to the problem they're trying to solve. So the advice I always say is to work hard, make your mark, but always have a reason for what you're doing, and be passionate about it, and go after it 110%.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Good Leadership
Thank
Practice.
you.
Let's give it up for Joe.